is Kick Radio.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the South Bank podcast. This is episode 31 now, and welcome back. We'll be covering Wolves' fixture over Brighton, which ended in much dismay for us, but overall, a pretty positive game, I'd say. Jacob, what were your thoughts this week after Wolves fail again to get the 3 points?
It's like deja vu, isn't it? Similar story to a Tottenham game the week before. If you'd have asked me before the fixture, would you take a draw? I'd have certainly said yes, but the way in which it happened was heartbreaking, really. Particularly the way the game went. I don't think Brighton, in all due respect, particularly deserved anything from it. I thought we were the better team, but we'll get into all of that. A lot to unpack, really, isn't there? Exciting episode, chances. Referee blunders, linesman blunders, poor subs, Luis Miguel stepping up as manager. We've got a good episode on our hands, I think, Cameron, don't we?
I have to agree, should be quite entertaining with all the drama that occurred on Sunday. Initially, what were your thoughts on the lineup? I thought the lineup actually was pretty good. I thought it was what we should have gone with after the draw against Tottenham. Again, hoping for that first 3 points, but yeah, my heart was certainly in my mouth by the end of the game. Wolves, initially, I thought we opened the game quite well. I'm sure you'd agree. I thought Hwang probably should have looked up for a cross for Larson quite early on. Brighton were looking very threatening on the counter, but they were being relatively dealt with by the likes of Andre, Cressy and John Stone especially, who I thought had a fantastic game on Sunday. But yeah, the first real chance was probably for Brighton, as they were just playing the ball around the box, but they were very well organised, Brighton, I thought. I'm not sure if you would agree.
Yeah, so I think Vitor would have loved to have gone unchanged, but obviously Doherty going in for surgery kind of put a stop to that possibility. But I actually thought Jackson Chatchua was fantastic.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Particularly defensively, I don't think Minter got the beating of it once. Maybe once when he put the ball across for the big chance in the second half that we'll get along to, but that was the only time. I think maybe the only reservation I would have had in the start would have been Hwang, but I was actually a defender of his yesterday. I actually thought he grew into the game quite well, Hwang Hee-chan. One of his better performances. I still don't think if you're going to play him, he should be on the wing, because I think he's wasted there. I think he isn't good enough taking on a man, etc. But this isn't going to be a podcast where I rip into him, because I thought he was actually relatively good on Sunday, and I think a standing ovation when he went off says it all, and that probably did well for his confidence. But yeah, start of the game, Brighton, like you say, probably having the better of the chances, but at that they're half chances. I think Cressy and Santi Bueno controlled the defending the box very well, which made Brighton have to shoot from ridiculous yards out, most of them just trickling to Sam Johnson or being very easy for him, aside from one where Johnson seemed to go down to try and claim the ball and almost miss it and put it into a very dangerous area, which was one of his maybe only mistakes yesterday. But yeah, relatively okay start, I think. And but the first 20 minutes were probably the best Brighton looked all game, in honesty. And that's saying something, because I didn't think they were particularly fantastic there.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I think we made it quite hard for ourselves in the fact that in that opening 20 minutes or so, whenever we'd win the ball back, we didn't quite have enough movement to create options for the passes. However, I thought the tactics on our side perhaps could have been better, but I shouldn't have complained as they got much worse later on. But yeah, I think Brighton overall, I have to agree, I think they look very tame. They were definitely there for the taking on Sunday. Not looking like the way they started the season is going to carry on for them. And I think ultimately it is a case of 2 points dropped. But yeah, to get onto the defence, like you say, I think Santi and Cressy both marshalled the back very well, barking orders. I think John Stone as well. From where I was sat, at least behind the goal, he was constantly barking orders at his defence. The likes of Jackson and Hugo Bueno, who sometimes can push up a bit out of position and leave the fullback spot's quite weak. They were both excellent as well with their positioning. I thought great performances for both of them. Obviously, Doherty well missed with his leadership, but I completely agree with what you said with Jackson stepping up. I thought he had a fantastic game on Sunday. Wolves, we proved to be very threatening with our set pieces on Sunday, and I think that is definitely where we caused Brighton the most trouble. In the 21st minute, Vitor Pereira received a red card, but let's get into how that happened. João Gomez was shoved by Baleba in the middle of the pitch, and he was protesting the fact that a yellow card wasn't given. Play obviously continues, the referee not even giving a blink of an eye to João Gomez at the time. And Hwang, he receives the ball on the wing and he tries to turn Baleba, who again chops him down. Baleba's a player I want to get onto in a minute also. But Hwang obviously chopped down and Baleba receives the yellow card. Vitor Pereira, there's been many different reports, some saying he used foul language to the ref, but I don't think there was any kind of signalling that that's the case. Sky Sports reporting that he kicked a ball in anger at the yellow card not being brandished, and that's what caused the red card. Whatever it is, he was sent off, and maybe that's where the overthinking started for him. Jacob, what were your thoughts on this whole bizarre altercation before we get to the free kick after?
Well, first of all, I think if it's to be believed that it was for protesting, I think he had every right to protest because the referee was in Jared Gillett extremely inconsistent in what he was giving as cards and not cards on Sunday. Particularly in the second half, I think he lost all control of the game. You know, when you think of Menezzi, a tackle that I could hear from my seat, it was that bad. A leg-breaking challenge that he didn't give. But if we cast our minds back to the Lopetegui era, this is the same referee that sent Mario Lemina off for being the third man to approach him. A rule that was never in place before and a rule that hasn't been in place since. So I feel like he's one that just enjoys the spotlight. You mentioned Sky Sports reporting a ball being kicked. Well, I sit directly looking above Pereira, and I'm pretty sure he was in my line of view the whole time that I was watching it. I did not see one ball get kicked in this time, so I do not believe that to be true. I think what's happened is potentially Pereira said something to Luis Miguel or one of the backroom staff, potentially about the referee or let's say about a Brighton player. This is all alleged, I know nothing. And I think the fourth official has informed the referee, and that's why the red card has been tarnished. Because if you look at Pereira, he does immediately turn to the fourth official to plead his case. So whether the fourth official has said anything to the referee, I don't know. I don't know what has happened. It's bizarre. And I mean, I think if that is the case, it's ridiculous anyway. I think the law of dissent should be reserved for stuff that are discriminatory, that are going to get you in massive trouble legally if you're going to say it, not something that hurts the ref's feelings. We can't be sending managers off because your feelings are hurt, because this is just ridiculous. And it doesn't paint a good picture for anyone in this situation. I just think it was an attempt to ruin the game, and I'm happy what happened straight after kind of shoved a hypothetical two fingers up to the referee in this situation.
Yeah, I think Jared Gillett was definitely feeling a bruised ego from whatever Vitor Pereira said. Reportedly, the ball that Vitor Pereira did kick was into his own dugout, but then again, why is that a problem? Which makes it even more bizarre to me. However, we're not here to protest the ins and out of a red card that we don't know exactly what was said for. What we are here to talk about is the subsequent free kick from the challenge on Hwang. A superb delivery from Arias, I thought, was headed away. No Wolves marker could get to it, but that ball fell straight onto the foot of Menezzi, who absolutely smashes the ball into the top right corner of Verbruggen's goal. And while it goes in off the crossbar and ricochets in off Verbruggen's back, we will not care one bit. We were 1-0 up, and it was a well-deserved goal, as I think Wolves had been on top for the last 5-10 minutes or so before this goal. And yeah, Jacob, how did you feel when this goal went in? Because I certainly was in absolute jubilation.
Well, we hadn't all stopped complaining about the red card yet around us by the time this had got in, so it was quite surprising. It was quite hard to tell from my seat actually if it had gone in or not, because obviously, like you mentioned, it hit the crossbar, bounces, ricochets, and goes into the back of the net. But yeah, fantastic, and what a hit by Manetzi. I mean, he should do this more. When he doesn't have time to think about it, he can actually finish. Like we say, the Everton one,
Yeah.
where he hits it first time. It's like a Dharma Traore. If he just hits it, it might go in. If he has time to think about it, God knows where it ends up. But 2 home games now for Manetzi, which is not a bad return for the boy. But I think we were full credit for this goal. And if I do proceed a bit onwards, probably should have got a second for half time the way the momentum was going. Probably should
I
have
completely
made
agree.
a bit more of an attempt to break for Brighton line because they were vulnerable for the rest of this half, I think.
Yeah, Brighton looked very tame after this effort went in. Marshall Manetzi is a player I just want to highlight briefly. I think since he's been moved actually into midfield instead of being played up front, he's looking far more confident in this box-to-box role.
100%.
Far better in both the attacking and defensive sense, and it certainly makes the most of his endless stamina running up and down the pitch 24/7.
He actually looks like a footballer now.
Yeah, and I'm pleased to say that because he's a player who brings the correct sort of passion and energy and confidence into this side. And now he's actually been playing his role. The fans are off his back a lot more because he's putting in the correct performances. And I'm surprised it's taken Vitor Pereira this long to utilise him correctly, especially when it's a player that he specifically wanted brought it in. However, yeah, Wolves, I thought since that goal, we just looked far more confident on the ball. Brighton could hardly get a tackle in, hardly put a pass together. And we did, straight after the goal, almost have a mess up at the back, but there was an offside in there when the ball almost trickled into John Stone's net. Wang, I thought a few moments later, he had a good shot at the edge of the box. I feel like he should have done a lot better there, personally. He had a lot of time and he hits it well wide. I thought he should at least get it on target from there.
I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it at all, to be honest. From the edge of the
I didn't
box,
mind the effort, but
cutting inside.
yeah, I didn't mind the decision. I think it was the correct decision to take on that chance, but I was quite disappointed that he didn't even get it on target with the amount of time he had. João Gomez had a chance that was headed into the ball, headed the ball into the hands of Barbara Bruggen. John Stone catches really a P-roller attempt at goal from Brighton, but that was the only chance Brighton even had the rest of that half. Wolves had another free kick at the very end of the half that we were hoping to see repeat, but we didn't. But Arias almost sneaked it into the top right corner. I thought it was a very good attempt from how wide it was, but that was pretty much all it was. There was a lot of yellow cards brandished towards the end of that first half, and we saw some substitutions at halftime for Brighton because of it. But Jacob, first half overall, what were you thinking at halftime?
I was very happy. I thought it was a very good half especially after the goal from Wolves. I think I remember saying in the concourse, we ironically look a lot more solid in a back four than a back five.
I said the exact same thing.
Cressy looks every penny like a future captain for us at the minute. When you watch him, always commanding his lines, celebrating tackles, I think he's a fan favourite in the making straight away. Elevating Santi Bueno's performance next to him as well. I think Andre, just looked unbelievable again on Sunday in that first half. I think it speaks volumes that 100 million Carlos Baleba went off at half time because Andre was simply having his number every time in that first half. I think it was very positive from Wolves, and it's just unfortunate that in the second half, certain things we were masters of our own downfall, I felt.
I wouldn't say I would personally say Vitor Pereira, but we'll get more onto that as the game goes on. To touch on the points you just said, Baleba interestingly. I think he's been one of those players. I think he's actually playing quite badly on purpose in all the games he's been playing this season, as he was trying to force a move in the summer that they didn't allow him to go and pursue. But I personally think that's part of the problem for him. However, we're not here to talk about Brighton transfer rumours. And that second half, Rutter did come on for Baleba, a player who I think looked the most threatening of the Brighton attackers when he entered the pitch. Yankuba Minter, I'm pretty sure he's still in Jackson to Chachua's pocket. He hasn't been seen since. But yeah, Rutter, when he did come on in the first 5 minutes of that second half, proper dive and a free kick. The Brighton diving is one point I want to say. Whenever they would go down, the referee would be giving a free kick. And I think there was no consistency in what he was giving a free kick and what he wasn't for Jared Gillett. As I think there were a few times when Wolves players were chopped down, especially in the more frantic moments towards the end of the second half, where Wolves were obviously trying to buy time, but I'm not too sure. In the 55th minute, Larson received the ball from Manetzi, holds it up quite well. He was isolated up top, lays off to Hwang and then to Hugo Bueno. And what I thought should have been 2-0, as I'm not sure who it was. I think it was Arias who hit it over. Yeah. And he should have scored, definitely should have scored to make it 2-0. And at this point, I hate to say it, but I did have an inkling of doubt begin to emerge, and it proved to be correct. But Jacob, what were your thoughts on this chance to make it 2?
Oh, yeah. He has to just, I know his momentum is what takes it over the bar, but you've got to keep it down. If he hits the target, it's 2-0. And it's a fantastic move. Like you say, Larson isolated, holds up the ball really well. And then Hugo Bueno, fantastic overlapping run.
Brilliant.
And finally, that cutback finds a Wolves player. He's been trying for weeks, and it finally finds a Wolves player, but we just couldn't finish it. Massively frustrated. Like you say, this and another chance we'll get onto is what really started ringing the alarm bells of, gee, when you're on top, you've got to score. I like your point about Brighton. They were constantly diving. It was like Tom Daly had been into the training sessions this week and taught them a thing or two. It was honestly getting infuriating in that second half. I think it was probably tactical to try and even up the odds a bit, as you mentioned, Brighton getting a few yellow cards, and it did work. I mean, ultimately, we switched to a back five because of Santi Bueno getting on a yellow card, and that's ultimately what I feel cost us the game. So
I completely agree.
Game plan in that sense may have worked, but as for the chance, yeah, Alias has to be scored, and I feel for Alias because he's getting better and better each week, and that goal surely is coming soon.
Yeah, I think it's going to do him a world of confidence when he gets that goal eventually. I think breaking that duck for him will hopefully, fingers crossed, open the floodgates, and he should start scoring more often then. Whether that's wishful thinking, only time will tell. But literally 2 minutes after that chance for Arias, an unbelievable save from Sam Johnstone kept Wolves in the game. How he even reacted to this quick enough, I have no idea. It was also a save I turned around to say to my brother at the time that Jose Sarr 100% concedes. 100%. His reaction time can be quite slow. And Johnstone, we were falling asleep, Wolves. I think it was just a moment where we broke concentration. Perhaps setting the alarm bells off for what happened later in the game when the same thing happened. But a cross was straight onto the foot of, I think it was Hinselwood. And Johnstone reacts instantly diving to the top right corner to keep it out. Jay, what were your thoughts on the fantastic save to keep us in the game at that point?
Well, he's a goalkeeper in form at the minute. Sam Johnston playing the best football, certainly since he's come to Wolves at the minute.
100%.
That first choice goalkeeper shirt is his. And you've got to say, well done to Sam Johnston. There's been a lot of talk in the summer about his attitude, about how he feels about being number 2, but he seems to have rubbished them. He's really fought for his place, and he's come in and made it his own. I think that's 3 games on the trot now where I've been really impressed with Sam Johnston. But yeah, wow, what a save. Like you say, the reaction times are that fast because, like you mentioned, Jose Sarr probably concedes. But if Jose Sarr does concede there, I'm not saying it's a mistake on Jose Sarr's
Oh
part.
no, 100%.
I'm saying it's a terribly good finish. I mean, you saw, I think, was it Jorginho Rutter hit it, or was it Hinchelwood?
I think it was Hinselwood.
But immediately hands on head, like, how
Yeah,
has that not got in?
first
Cannot believe
touch,
it.
not even time to take it down. Just and straight into the top corner. Ridiculous finish.
I
Well,
mean,
attempted finish.
it's unbelievable, Johnson. That should have been, like you say, Cameron, that should have been the alarm bell. That should have been the wake up call at the back that we don't let any more crosses come in from that side. And obviously, subtle foreshadowing, we did.
Yep. Well, Vitor Pereira, not quite the reaction to this chance that Wolves fans wanted to see. I remember I was saying at the time to my family in the stands that we could really use with another pacey attacker on. The likes of Larson, I don't think was playing too well on Saturday. Hwang, while I think he was off, I think he was putting in a brilliant effort defensively, pressing from the front, really getting himself stuck in, trying to win the ball back at times. But I don't think he was quite quick enough to keep up with the Brighton defence. Obviously, like you alluded to earlier in this episode, I don't think it's quite his fault. He's not cut out to play at the wing. But Vitor Pereira, while in the stands, I'm not sure if he had a few pints in the concourse because he decided to then put on a centre half. Agbadou coming on for Hwang. Agbadou, who keeps making mistakes week upon week. And while I don't think he had a bad game necessarily Sunday, I don't think it was the correct decision to change to a back five at not only a 1-0 lead, but also to invite so much pressure in from the Brighton attack, who until that couldn't string passes together hardly. And bar the introduction of Rutter, who looked lively, they were quite lifeless in attack up to this point. And it was only when we succeeded in going defensive at a time where we really shouldn't, with about 40 minutes left of the game or so. I wasn't too happy with this change, Jacob, and I'd imagine you weren't either.
I'm actually gonna see where Vitor's coming from a bit here. I understand why he went to the back three. I'd have probably rather seen Yerson Mosquera come on as a straight swap for Santi. Sorry, I understand why he went to the back three to cover Santi because of that yellow card. Obviously, in a back two, he's far more exploited. He has to put in more tackles and could be last man. So he is going to get sent off if he's doing so. So I understand why, but like I say, would have probably rather have not only seen it stay as a back four, but seen Yerson Mosquera as opposed to Emmanuel Agbadou come on. I don't think this was the worst of the subs. I think taking Hugo Bueno off for David Moller-Wolf was the one that stood out to me as bizarre more than anything, and also taking Strand Larson off, who did need to go off, but went off for Bellegarde rather than Tolu. I think that was a strange one, as we then resorted to Arias up front, which Arias on his own up front against Van Heck and Lewis Dunk, God bless him, he isn't going to be able to do anything.
Yeah, I the changes as a whole weren't ones which I agreed with. The last two substitutes you alluded to, I'll get onto in a couple of minutes. I thought immediately from Agbadou's introduction, we were inviting too much pressure on. JSL was looking knackered at this point, and I would have liked to see Tolu come on quite a bit earlier. While I understood Strand Larsen's frustration upon being subbed after he hit the post from a great bit of work from himself, obviously annoyed at the fact he didn't score that chance and probably feeling like he could have got one with how weak Brighton looked defensively. As soon as I saw Bellegarde and Moller-Wolf warming up, ready to come on, getting their kit on, I was really questioning it. I thought Hugo Bueno was having a fantastic game. Bellegarde, while I'm not against seeing him introduced, I didn't think it was the right timing in the game to bring him in. Cressy, right before that JSL chance, he put in an unbelievable tackle on the last man and celebrated it like it was a goal. And like you alluded to earlier, just his passion is unbelievable. Definitely a future captain, and I think he's already looking like a fan favourite. But I personally, for me, these substitutions what just put the nail in the coffin as soon as they entered the pitch. Moller Wolf, while I love his name and I love the fact he is made for Wolves practically, I don't think he's made for the Premier League. He doesn't look up to the required standard, at least not yet, till he's had time to adjust and time to play a game. But when we're sitting rock bottom of the league, I don't think that's the time to be trying to give him minutes to warm up to the league against some fantastic wingers in this Brighton side in Minter and Mitoma. I was just very, very disappointed at these substitutions, and I was getting an immense sense of deja vu. We all were saying in the stands, and I'm sure you and people around you were saying the exact same thing, that this is exactly what we did against Spurs, and it was only ever going to go the same way. While I understand Vitor wanting to get this 3 points over the line, so we've broken that duck, I don't think going ultra defensive is the way to go about it. It's not quite FIFA. This is real life, and teams are going to keep piling on that pressure. Brighton eventually did get their goal after an absolute mare from Jared Gillett in giving this corner. The linesman didn't signal for it. The ball had already crossed the line from behind the goal, and it hit to Chachua's thigh after it was out of play, and the corner was given. And as Wolves proceed to protest to the referee, he hadn't even blown his whistle, if I'm not mistaken. And Brighton played it short. A free cross to Van Hecker, who just towers over and heads it home. I absolutely felt for Sam Johnstone here, who fought so hard for that clean sheet all afternoon. And everyone's heads just dropped upon this goal going in. Jacob, I'm sure yours did too.
Yeah, it was a sucker punch. Obviously, where you're sat now, you were right on the corner. I couldn't see it too well for where I was. But regardless, I have sympathy for our players protesting, but at the same point, you've got to be switched on.
I agree.
You can't. At the end of the day, the ref isn't going to change his decision, whether it's right or wrong. You've got to be switched on to it, and they're not. It's felt like last season again. A short corner crossed into a box, and we don't deal with it. And into the back of net, I mean, Sam Johnson goes absolutely wild at his defenders straight after, getting straight up and fuming. And I don't blame him, like you say, for tooth and nail for that clean sheet. And a defensive switch off is what's ended with a goal for Brighton. I will say I thought, whilst the players on the pitch weren't the right ones to be on, I thought our response was still good to this goal. I thought, even after the late equaliser, it looked like if anyone is going to nick this, it was going to be Wolves at the end of that game. So I have to give us some kudos for that. But at the end of the day, I think, first of all, if we hadn't gone to the back five and invited the pressure on, the corner wouldn't get given in the first place.
Agree.
And I think there's blood on the hands of Luis Miguel, ex-Vitor player behind the mask. Obviously controlling it from the stands.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think while the referee probably shouldn't have given the corner, I think that's a complete cop-out of an excuse to blame it on him. The corner should have been defended far better. How many times are we going to sit on this podcast season after season and talk about how it's a moment of lack of concentration, rather, that has ended up costing us a game? We can't afford to switch off in this league. How many times are we going to have to be at this position for us to realise it? I was very disappointed. I think the players had worked so hard all afternoon. I thought while the substitutions were incorrect, I also agree with you that the correct attitude was shown by the players. Players like Agbadou going up atop at times as a makeshift striker. While I enjoyed it in a sense of how almost cartoonish it was, it just wasn't the correct profiles on the pitch at the time to react. And I think at this point, surely the substitutions should have been made with how long was left on the clock. Considering that added time hadn't been announced yet, you could assume that there'd be about 10 minutes left or so. Surely that was then the time to introduce the likes of Rodrigo Gomez and Talua Rokadare. But Vitor Pereira seemed to think otherwise. or Luis Miguel, whoever it is that's responsible. I think they ultimately cost us the game with these substitutions, both timing wise and the profiles brought on. I was just extremely disappointed, and I completely lost my head at this moment, if I'm honest. It was the 90th minute when we decided to bring the likes of Tolu on, and João Gomez exiting the pitch also had me fuming, because I think in that moment he'd had a brilliant game. He was running around, even up top at times, due to the lack of attacking profiles on the pitch, just pressing relentlessly, trying to win this ball back, showing never say die mentality, really. And I would have much rather seen someone like Andre, or even a defender at this point in the game, go off. But yeah, it just wasn't to be. And it was too little too late in the attacking department. And like you say, blood on the hands of the coaching team for this. And I think no one else should feel more disappointed in themselves.
Yeah, certainly. João Gomez definitely shouldn't have gone off. I think if you're going to take a midfielder off, which I didn't think was necessary, it had to be Andre.
Agreed.
Rodrigo Gomez is quite a strange situation. That's 2 games in a row now where he hasn't featured. Seems to have been phased out of the squad a little bit for some peculiar reason, despite being our top goal scorer across all competitions. Naturally, for me, I think if you're looking for a goal, the top goal scorer is probably someone that should be on the pitch. But hey, what do I know? But it would make sense. But a bit of a sucker punch, what I will say, to be a bit more positive on the back note. I'd rather look how we've looked the last 2 weeks than other teams like Nottingham Forest, because at least we seem to have found an identity the last couple of weeks. We mustn't forget we've played 2 difficult sides in Spurs and Brighton. And whilst both games we've come out feeling quite deflated, we have got results, whereas teams like Forest and Burnley currently look somewhat hopeless and are getting destroyed the last 2 weeks. So I think that is somewhat of a positive at the moment. I know we're still sat bottom of the table without a win, but I think there's a bit more hope in our fan base for the Nottingham Forest at the minute, who look like an absolute tragedy. Same with almost West Ham. I know Nuno's got in, but they didn't look great against Arsenal either. I know it's Arsenal away, but they didn't look great either. So if we're trying to stay positive, I think we're still not too far behind the pack. We've got, on paper, a favourable run of games after the international break. So if we keep this back 4, then hopefully the wins will come. But it's just about the players not letting their heads drop.
I completely agree. You mentioned the upcoming international break, and I think that's what makes this result quite hard to take. I know the players' heads dropped upon the goal being conceded, and I hope that this isn't on their minds too much over the international break and puts a real downer, as I think we were really beginning to slowly play our way back into form and show the hunger and real energy that this team can bring onto the pitch. Forest, I completely agree. I think Ange could actually get sacked very soon. I think he probably will. I think just the tactical complete change from Nuno did not suit Forest at all. And I think Mr. Marinakis is being quite silly in what he's doing. On the point of West Ham, I think against Everton, they looked okay at best. And I think while I'd agree that they aren't looking the best, I think they all have decent fixtures coming up also, and I wouldn't be too surprised to see them do better. At the end of the day, we are still bottom of the league, so I'm not going to exactly count my chickens, but Sunderland hitting the buffers against United will definitely give us a boost, with them being our next fixture. Stadium of Light being an incredibly tough ground to go to, with how fantastic their fan base is. And Sunderland's home record already this season is looking incredible, and it will definitely be a late game. But for our coverage on our trip to Sunderland, please join us next week, as due to that game being quite a way away, we're not going to be covering that today. But stats-wise, against Brighton actually looked the far more dominant team if you only looked at, say, SofaScore or something regarding this match, having far more shots due to their efforts outside the box, having double wall shots on target with 6-3, and more corners. And Wolves actually gave away more fouls, surprisingly, despite the abundance of Brighton yellow cards.
Did we give away more fouls, or were our fouls just given?
Well, that's the question I was about to ask you. I'm glad you realised, but I don't know. I think the refereeing performance was definitely a spanner in the works, so to speak, on Sunday. But Jacob, do you have anything else to add?
No, I don't really. Suppose it feels nice not to get battered by Brighton for once, but somehow they still managed to make it feel like a defeat. I just hate playing these guys, honestly.
Yeah.
It's the one, I think it's probably the one in the calendar I least look forward to.
Oh, same.
All due respect to Brighton, there's not really anything to look forward to with them. Their fans are rubbish. They don't add anything really. They just beat us. They're just an annoyance. They're like an annoying itch you just can't get rid of. It's just a horrible fixture. I'm glad we've got it out of the way until we play them at the Amex. But yeah, that's all really. Stay tuned for next week. Going to be a bit of an experimental one. So let us know your feedback on that, whether you enjoy it, whether you don't. And that's it, really. Happy to be back on the podcast. Happy to be going about it. But let's make the next one about a win, please. Because, my God, are we long overdue one in the league? Because we are, of course, winning the Carabao Cup this season. But yeah, that's all I have to say this week, I think.
Yeah, I also have to agree. We hope you join us next week for our preview to our trip to the Stadium of Light and some trivia if you are interested in that sort of thing. But from us at the South Bank Podcast, I've been your host, Cameron Gorman. I've been joined by the ever-present Jacob Jones. Thank you for joining us this week, and we hope to see you again. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Bye.
This is Kick Radio.